Introduction to Lie Detection Techniques. Compiled by Rosalind T. Lopez. Since time immemorial, lying has been a part of everyday life. For this reason, it has become a subject of interest in several disciplines. Lie detection defined as an assessment of a verbal statement, with the goal to reveal a possible intentional deceit. It may refer to a cognitive process of detecting deception by evaluating message content, as well as nonverbal cues. It also may refer to questioning techniques used along with technology, that record physiological functions to ascertain truth and falsehood in response. The concept of lying and the ability to do so, have reached a new level with technological advances that have moved lie detection, from the realm of fire and water, to electroencephalograph, facial action coding system and functional magnetic resonance imaging. But the question remains, as to whether human beings are better equipped to detect lying than centuries ago. Social psychology defines deception as a communicator's deliberate attempt to foster a belief or understanding in others, which the recipient considers to be untrue. Similarly, dictionaries use these very features to define lying and deception. For example, according to the Oxford Dictionary of English, deception is a statement that deviates from or perverts the truth. Deception is a pervasive, and some would argue a necessary, phenomenon in human communication, yet its very action stirs up moral indignation and rage. As a result, for as long as there have been lies, there have been methods of lie detection. Early used methods of lie detection. One of the first methods to prove the veracity of a statement uttered by the accused, was described in China circa 1000 BC. The person suspected of lying was required to fill his or her mouth with a handful of dry rice. After a while, he or she was to spit out the rice. If the expectorated rice remained dry, the suspect was found guilty of fraud. This method was based on the physiological principle and the assumption that experiencing fear and anxiety is accompanied by decreased salivation and a dry mouth. Lie detection is a part of numerous criminal, medical or legal professions. Police officers are challenged by deception, especially in the determination of facts in crimes that have been committed. Judges and lawyers seek justice in legal disputes, and medical specialists demand the truth for accurate diagnosis and appropriate treatment of patients. The following part is an overview of the most commonly used methods of lie detection. There are a wide variety of technologies available for this purpose. The most common and long-used measure is the polygraph. The works of contemporary authors imply that fear paralyzes us, and is physically reflected in an increased heart rate and a mental sense of hopelessness. The somatic expression of anxiety and fear include changes in behavior, associated with the feeling of a dry mouth. The symptomatology is similar to manifestations of depression, panic disorder, and the like. Given the fact that the aforementioned knowledge about the physiological manifestations of anxiety were not known at that time, and thus not taken into account, the majority of prisoners, regardless of whether they had actually committed a crime or lied, were executed. Erasistratus, Greek physicist and physician, tried to detect deception by measuring the pulse. This same technique re-emerged as a part of testing with polygraph in 1921. The trial by ordeal method. The historical writings of various European countries more often mention a technique known as trial by ordeal, or the judgments of God. This was another method used by authorities in the interest of detecting lies and finding the truth. It was used to prove the truth of a claim of an accused person, by a specific act that the person had to go through. Based on its favorable or unfavorable outcome, the claim was accepted as true or false. The rationale, and hence the court's argument, was based on the belief that God would not let a righteous man suffer and injustice prevail. They concerned either a one-sided substantiation of the truth by the accused person, or a double-sided one, when one was subjected to the judgment of God. Trial by ordeal is a judicial practice, by which the guilt or innocence of the accused is determined, by subjecting them to an unpleasant, usually dangerous experience. In some cases, the accused were considered innocent if they survived the test, or if their injuries healed. Ordeals. A semi-magical method of determining guilt or innocence. Judicium Dei, a procedure based on the premise that God would help the innocent by performing a miracle on their behalf. A common method of deciding guilt or innocence, and a practice of referring disputed questions to the judgment of God, determined by various means, particularly by physical tests. Fire, water, and wager of battle were the most common prevalent kinds of ordeal. The following are examples. Red-hot iron ordeal, wager of battle, ordeal by balance, ordeal by water, boiling and cold, ordeal by rice chewing, ordeal of the red water, ordeal by combat, ordeal of the corsnade, or ordeal by blessed bread, test of the Eucharist, ordeal of the beer. Ordeal of the needle, ordeal by heat and fire, trial of the cross, trial of the waxen shirt, hereditary sieve method, donkey's tail ordeal, and ordeal of the tiger. Red-hot iron ordeal. The accused had to carry a red-hot iron in his hands while he walked 9 marked paces. In the unlikely event of no burns appearing on his hands, he was adjudged innocent. Otherwise, he was promptly hanged. A variation of licking the red-hot iron, or the suspect had to run barefooted and blindfolded over 9 red-hot plowshares. The hand or foot was bound up, and inspected 3 days afterwards. If the accused had escaped unhurt, the person was pronounced innocent; if hurt, the person was guilty. Wager of battle. A form of trial by which someone's guilt or innocence was decided by personal combat between the parties or their champions. In the wager of battle, the judgment of God was thought to determine the winner. Example, which involved 2 sides in a dispute holding lighted candles. Whoever candle lasted longest was pronounced the winner. Ordeal by balance. A scale of balance is used. In one end of the scale the accused is placed, and on the other end is a counterbalance. The person will step out of the scale and listen to a judge to deliver an exhortation on the balance and get back in. If he was found lighter than before, then he should be acquitted. Ordeal by water, boiling and cold. The water test was carried out by using either hot or cold water. When using the hot water test, the accused was ordered to place the hand into a cauldron with boiling water and hold it there for a specified time. Also known as the cauldron ordeal, large kettle. If the hand in boiling water showed no traces of scalding or small blisters, it represented a sign of the accused person's claim to be true. A variation of this test involved the accused retrieving a ring or stone out of the cauldron of boiling water. The test based on cold water included throwing the accused person into the water in a rope sack. If the tested person emerged at the surface in a short time, it signified that not even water accepts him or her, or more precisely servants of the devil, hence liars too, rejected baptism, and that is why water cannot accept him or her. Ordeal by rice chewing. It is performed with a kind of rice called sathi, prepared with various incantations. The person on trial eats the sathi, with the face to the east, and then spits upon a leaf. If saliva is mixed with blood or the corner of his mouth swells or he trembles, he is declared to be a liar. Ordeal of the red water. The ordeal of the sassi bark or red water is used in the wide region of eastern Africa. The accused is made to fast for 12 hours, and then swallows a small amount of rice. He is then immersed into dark-colored water. The water is actually emetic, and if the suspect ejects all the rice, he is considered innocent of the charge. Otherwise, the accused is guilty. Ordeal by combat. The aggrieved party claimed the right to fight the alleged offender, or to pay a champion to fight for him. The victor is said to win not by his own strength, but because of supernatural powers that had intervened on the side of the right. If still alive after the combat, the loser might be hanged or burned for a criminal offense, or have a hand cut off and property confiscated in civil actions. Ordeal of the corsned, or ordeal by blessed bread. A priest puts the corsned or hallowed bread into the mouth of the accused, with various imprecations. If the accused swallowed it, he was freed from punishment. In some references, this method is also called consecrated meal. The examining person was a priest who, at the end of worship, gave the accused a piece of dry bread and a piece of hard sheep's cheese. The accused was exonerated if he or she managed to swallow in one bite without difficulty. However, if the person choked or suffocated, the test brought a guilty verdict. Test of the Eucharist. This was applied chiefly among the clergy and monks. When they took the host, it was believed that God would smite the guilty with sickness or death. Others believe if the accused is innocent, when given a poisonous drink for him to take in, Angel Gabriel will descend from heaven to prevent the accused from taking in the poisonous drink. Ordeal of the bier. An ordeal that was used in medieval times to test the guilt of a person accused of murder, and that was based on the belief that the murder victim's corpse would begin to bleed if it was touched or approached by the murderer. Ordeal of the needle. A red-hot needle was made to pierce the lower lip of the alleged criminal, and if blood flowed from the wound, he was deemed guilty, but if none, he is innocent. Ordeal by heat and fire. The accused walked barefooted over red-hot coals, or was made to walk through fire. If he was unharmed by fire, he was considered innocent. Trial of the cross. The accuser and the accused were placed under the cross with their arms extended or crosswise, and the first to move his hands to suffer them to fall was held guilty. Trial of the waxen shirt. The accused was dressed in cloth covered with wax and walked barefoot over burning coals. If he was unhurt by the fire and the wax did not melt, he was considered innocent. Hereditary sieve method. Dr. Hans Gross mentioned this ordeal in his famous book on criminal investigation, in which beans were thrown into a sieve as the name of each suspect was called. The deception criteria were described as follows: if the bean jumps out of the sieve, the owner of the name pronounced is innocent; if the bean remains in the sieve, the person named is the thief. Donkey's tail ordeal. As a psychological theory, a donkey is placed in a room alone and observed. If the donkey cried, a judgment of guilt in crimes is presumed. It is believing that deep inside one's conscience, he is guilty. Ordeal of the sacred donkey. Around 1500 BC in India, Indian priests paints a donkey's tail with carbon residue from an oil lamp and placed the animal in a dark tent. The suspects were sent into the tent and told that pulling the magic donkey's tail would reveal the liar. If a guilty man pulls his tail, the donkey will bray. When the suspects came out, the priests examined their hands. Those with clean hands had not touched the donkey's tail. It was assumed that this was due to the suspects' fear of their guilt being discovered, proving they were liars. Ordeal of the tiger. The accused and accuser are placed inside a cage of a tiger. If the tiger spare one of them, the one who remained is considered innocent. Phrenology. In 1870, Franz Joseph Gall discovered a new possibility of detecting deception through recognition of emotions of the accused. The theory was elaborated and further improved in cooperation with his pupil Johann Gaspar Spurzheim. The point of their interest was examination of specific areas of the brain, assuming the existence of relations between different abilities and skull shape. The main ideas of their theory pointed to the brain, as the central organ of the mind, which can perceive individual emotions such as emulousness, ambition, destructiveness and, among the many others, the tendency to lie, and to engage in criminal behavior. The more active parts of the brain are well recognizable from the contour of the skull. These areas were more convex or concave. It was assumed that the relative size of each area can be enlarged or reduced by training and self-discipline. Gall became a pioneer in mapping the human skull, and this newly created scientific discipline was named Phrenology. Gall often made public appearances, demonstrating various criminals with shaved heads, and emphasized the anomaly on the skulls. Through phrenology, he tried to determine liars randomly chosen from the audience. His services were also occasionally used in legal disputes to determine which party was lying. In the field of criminology, phrenology helped to spread the belief that delinquent behavior, together with lying, should be the subject of scientific study. It strengthened the medical model of criminal behavior according to which the behavior of some perpetrators may be affected by brain malfunctions. By virtue of this idea, many crimes were reassessed, saving a multitude of mentally ill people from being unfairly sentenced. Although phrenology fell into oblivion and was discredited, Gall's work rendered an important service by reminding researchers that the human body is affected by environmental factors, and together they build an entity of mutual relations. Graphology. Simultaneously with phrenology, graphology began to spread, and in 1875 started to be considered a useful scientific method of lie detection. Its origins are associated with an effort to detect forged signatures, which led to the scientific analysis as we know it nowadays. Its founder, Jean Hippolyte Michin, assumed that some peculiarities of handwriting may relate to certain personality traits. Following the analysis of handwriting, graphology attempts to identify a personal writing movement through which the nature of the writer may be manifested. The excitement around graphology as a method of lie detection ended after the First World War. During the war, graphology was deemed an appropriate means of verifying the authenticity of documents and signatures. However, graphology was not acknowledged as an appropriate tool for lie detection. Nowadays, this method is used in various areas, such as employment profiling, to do a personality profile, or psychological analysis, used alongside other projective personality assessment tools. Contemporary methods of lie detection. Polygraph. The polygraph, after phrenology, in 1881, the first modern lie detection device called Lombrosso's glove, was created by an Italian criminologist, physician, and anthropologist Cesare Lomrosso. He attempted to measure changes in the accused person's blood pressure, which were recorded on a graph or chart. This sophisticated technology was improved on during the First World War by William M. Marston, and was elaborated into its final version only after the war in 1921. This device served to record changes in blood pressure and changes in breathing while giving testimony. A few years later, John Larson and Leonard Keeler designed a psychiatric device called cardiopneumopsychograph, also known as a polygraph or a lie detector. This polygraph recorded respiratory rate, blood pressure changes, and changes in galvanic skin response, bioelectric reactivity of the skin. Given the fact that studies of Lewis and Cuppery, 2009, point out to the ratio between thoracic and diaphragmatic breathing as a sensitive indicator of stress and emotional change, male and female breathing, and these indicators usually differ, modern polygraphs measure respiratory rate of chest and abdomen separately, which leads to a significant increase in the diagnostic value of measurement. The basis for evaluating the outcome of a polygraph is in the relationship between physiological changes, which manifest when a person is not telling the truth. These changes can be observed and measured by the polygraph using skin conductance, blood pressure, heart rate, and respiration. Unfortunately, bodily changes can vary and are also produced by states other than lying. In the late 1990s, the polygraph began to be used in the United States not only by the police, but also for verifying the reliability of the public safety employees and managers, verifying the veracity of the information provided about themselves in the curriculum vitae, previous employment, etc. Due to its growing popularity and recurring inaccurate results, the test of reliability was performed on polygraph. National Academies of Science, NAS, indicated the reliability of polygraph as 81% to 91%. These results were supported by researchers. For example, the signs of nervousness, fear, and emotional disturbances occur not only in people who reported false information, but also in people who tell the truth. In conclusion, it can be stated that the polygraph does not detect lies, but instead measures physiological responses postulated to be associated with deception. None of these responses are specific to deception, nor are they necessarily always present when deception occurs. However, when used by well-trained examiners and in conjunction with other techniques, it appears to offer a useful adjunct in identifying those who attempt to deceive. Observation of nonverbal expressions. The desire to detect lies is not reflected only in the use of various technical equipment. Observation and attention focused on some specific behavioral expressions have also played important roles. By the mid-1960s, Ekman initiated a series of cross-cultural studies, focusing on face expressions, emotions, and gestures. In addition to his basic research on emotions and their expression, he had also been studying deceit. Craig, Hyde, and Patrick, 1991, conducted research to help clinicians identify distortions of the pain experience, such as willfully minimizing pain displays, masking, or exaggeration of such behaviors, simulating. Authors identified the facial movements associated with masking and simulating, as well as genuine pain. In response to this study, Gallen and Thorne, 1993, conducted research, which focused on the identification of false expressions of pain using the method called FACS, Facial Action Coding System. FACS is a research tool, useful for measuring any facial expression a human being can make. FACS is an anatomically based system, for detailed description of all observable facial movements. This method was invented by Paul Ekman in 1979. Later, this method was improved and renamed as Ekman Micro-Expression Training Tool. In addition, Ekman presented interpretations as to why we are not successful in lie detection. The evolutionary lack of facilities for authentic disguise, as well as for the detection of lies. People in communities constantly lived close together, and did not have many opportunities to cover cheating, and the discovery of lies lead to the application of extreme sanctions. Living conditions have significantly changed, and society provides more possibilities for lying. At times, it almost encourages its members to lie, or to use half-truths, for example, advertising sector, trade, and business. Yet, we still possess little sensitivity to detecting lies. An individual, according to Ekman, is generally predetermined to trust, which also makes life simpler. The desire to be deceived or not knowing the truth. It includes situations in which we do not want to know anything about some facts, thus we do not ask questions, for example, in relationships. Another of Ekman's explanations is based on the conclusions of Goffman, who states that it is important for us to be socially accepted, to be affable, rather than tell the truth, or so-called courtesy lies. The last explanation directly concerns professionals who deal with detecting lies. As we have seen in the study of Ekman, none of these results showed the ability to accurately recognize lies. In this case, an appropriate method has proven to be the training by FACS, Facial Action Coding System, allowing successful lie detection by examining emotional expressions in 70% of cases. Another contemporary methods of lie detection. Voice stress analysis, VSA, is accomplished by measuring fluctuations in the physiological microtremor present in speech. A microtremor is a low-amplitude oscillation of the reflex mechanism, controlling the length and tension of a stretched muscle caused by the finite transmission delay between neurons to and from the target muscle. Microtremors are present in every muscle in the body including the vocal cords, and have a frequency of around 8 to 12 Hz. During times of increased stress, this microtremor shifts in frequency. This change in frequency transfers from the muscles in the vocal tract to the voice produced. On the basis of these findings, the VSA is regarded as a suitable means, for example, the detection of false statements. Another contemporary methods of lie detection. Brain-based lie detection. Since the 1980s and the onset of neuroscience, completely different views on the possibility of detecting lies at the highest level of mental processes have emerged through the medium of measuring brain activities, such as transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, positron emission tomography, PET, and brain fingerprinting, EEG or electroencephalograph wave. The most frequently used methods are brain fingerprinting, PET, EEG, and fMRI. Brain fingerprinting is a way of detecting a specific EEG, or electroencephalograph wave. The theory is that the brain processes known and relevant information differently from the way it processes unknown or irrelevant information. The brain's processing of known information, such as the details of a crime stored in the brain, is revealed by a specific pattern in the EEG. Farwell's brain fingerprinting originally used the well-known P300 brain response to detect the brain's recognition of the known information. Later, Farwell discovered the P300 MERMR, or memory and encoding-related multifaceted electroencephalographic response, which includes the P300 and additional features, and is reported to provide a higher level of accuracy and statistical confidence than the P300 alone. In peer-reviewed publications, Farwell and colleagues report less than 1% error rate in laboratory research and real-life field applications. In an independent research, Lacano confirmed Farwell's results. Despite of the results, the method of brain fingerprinting exhibits some disadvantages. For these techniques to be of use in the detection of criminal offenses, researchers must have a sufficient amount of information about the event and the perpetrator. This is necessary in order to be able to document the suspect's EEG patterns when the correct answer is provided. It is also conceivable, especially with the intensity of media coverage, that a suspect may possess information about a crime without being the perpetrator. Brain fingerprinting is much more expensive, and requires more time and preparation than a standard polygraph. This, along with Farwell's patent, has limited the extent to which this procedure can be used. Other possibilities of using the graphical brain imaging for the purpose of lie detection are functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, and positron emission tomography, or PET, which focus on the activity of the central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord, and not the peripheral nervous system, the neurons. In another study, Langleben and others used BOLD, or blood oxygenation level dependent fMRI, in an attempt to localize changes in regional neuronal activity during deception. A group of researchers at Harvard used BOLD fMRI to compare the brain activation in 3 scenarios: truth, spontaneous lies, and memorized lies. They found that both types of lies elicited more activation in the anterior prefrontal cortices bilaterally, involved in retrieving memory. They also found that spontaneous lies preferentially activated the anterior cingulate cortex as compared with memorized lies. Other published studies examining brain function during deception have demonstrated that the results of these methods are not sufficiently precise, and lack strong empirical foundation. Specifically, Spence, in 2008, points to problems with replication, large individual brain differences, and unspecified brain regions associated with truth-telling. Also, brain activity when lying depends on the situation. Another limitation of techniques in the field of lie detection is the human brain itself. It processes all that passes through the perceptual field, not only from the outside, but also from inside. It is irrelevant to what extent this activity will penetrate into consciousness. The accusation, whether rightly or wrongly, brings the brain to the limit situation, energizes memory, attention, emotional level and decision-making ability. All of these changes can be recorded using functional magnetic resonance or through a polygraph. However, it is possible to hide what is going on in one's brain during the task solution by occupying the brain with completely different activities, for example, mathematical operations, memories, a technique called self-defense. This is the first range of issues which discredits brain imaging methods. The second problem arises from experiments that are purely laboratory and the participants are largely a specific sample of students, Department of Psychology or Medicine. Their results may not correspond with the results of other tested groups. As for the third problem, it arises from the fact that the experimenters are asked to deceive, so this is not considered a spontaneous lie. The possibility to avoid this would be not to follow instructions. The experimenter should intervene only if the participant asks for it. The fourth issue relates to the diversity of situations and with different types of deception. Different people with the same kind of fraud can have a different type of attitude. Therefore, the personality and attitude of an individual need to be taken into account. Disclaimer: the information presented here is merely a collection for respective teaching assignments. Various sources as listed at the end of the presentation as well as freely available material from Internet were consolidated to prepare this learning materials. The ownership of the information lies with the respective authors or institutions.